The champagne struck Elena Langford across the shoulder before the crystal glass shattered at her feet. 300 guests fell silent beneath the gold-lit ceiling of the Marlowe Foundation ballroom. On the screen behind her, a red figure glowed above the words "Uanacra's transfer, 18,400,000. Victor Langford stood at center stage, his expression making the humiliation look rehearsed. "My wife," he announced, "has spent 3 years pretending to protect this company while quietly stealing from it." Cameras turned toward Elena. She felt every lens find the wine spreading across her ivory gown, but she refused to lower her head. The gala was meant to celebrate Langford Global's Employee Protection Fund before a midnight merger vote. Victor had transformed it into her public trial. Victor tapped the screen. Bank records appeared beside Elena's employee photograph. Yesterday at 4:17 p.m., she moved $18 million into an offshore account. She used my credentials, bypassed 2 compliance officers, and deleted the audit trail. "I preserved the audit trail," Elena said. Victor's jaw tightened. "Then tell everyone where the money went." Elena looked past him toward the ballroom's north balcony. Adrian Langford, Victor's older half-brother and chief financial officer, watched without expression. Beside him stood General Counsel Margaret Shaw, one hand resting on the leather case containing the merger documents. Both were waiting for Elena to say the account name. She would not. The protected escrow held restitution payments for 11 dockworkers' families whose identities had been sealed after they agreed to testify about cargo disappearances inside Langford terminals. Exposing the account publicly would reveal where those families had been relocated. "Not here," Elena said. "Freeze the merger and give me 20 minutes with an independent terminal." Laughter rippled through the room. Victor stepped closer. "You don't get to issue conditions. Someone duplicated an authorization key that should not exist. Yours." "No." Elena turned toward the screen. The transfer was approved with Matteo Rinaldi's encrypted signature. A subtle movement passed through the guests seated at the Moretti table. Victor glanced at Adrian, then back at Elena. "Another lie." "It can't be a lie," she said, "and it can't be a legitimate signature. Matteo Rinaldi died 6 years ago." At the rear of the ballroom, Dante Moretti rose. Conversation died as he approached. Moretti Maritime owned 2 terminals in Victor's merger, while his family held enormous influence over coastal unions, insurers, and security contracts. Matteo Rinaldi had once managed Dante's private accounts. Victor faced him. "This is a family matter." "No," Dante replied. "You placed a dead man's signature on a public screen, now it's mine." Adrian descended from the balcony. "The signature proves nothing. Elena could have copied it." Elena studied him. Adrian had answered too quickly. Victor had not yet shown the encryption certificate, but Adrian already knew the signature was digital rather than handwritten. Before she could challenge him, Margaret opened her leather case. "We have more than bank records," the attorney said. "Hotel surveillance captured Mrs. Langford meeting a Moretti representative 48 hours before the transfer." A photograph appeared on screen. Elena sat across from a shadowed man in a hotel cafe sliding a sealed envelope toward him. The image was real. The meaning was not. She had delivered relocation documents to a court-appointed intermediary whose identity she had promised to protect. Someone had chosen the camera angle carefully enough to hide his federal credentials. Victor pulled a folded document from his jacket. "I signed the criminal complaint 20 minutes ago," he said. "Your accounts are frozen, your access has been revoked, and our marriage is over." The 2 corporate security officers moved toward Elena. Dante stepped between them. "You will not touch her." Victor's face hardened. "Are you admitting she works for you?" "I'm saying that from this moment forward, Elena Langford has access to every attorney, investigator, protected office, and financial resource under my authority." A murmur swept through the ballroom. Dante looked directly at Elena. My empire stands behind her. For the first time that evening, Adrian's composure cracked. His hand moved toward his phone. Elena saw it and understood. The gala was never the real target. The transfer, the forged signature, and her public disgrace were designed to keep everyone inside the ballroom while something happened elsewhere. She turned sharply toward Dante. "Call Terminal 9, she said. Do not let them open Dock 17. Victor signaled security to seal every exit. Elena looked at the clock above the stage. 11:32 p.m. They had 8 minutes. Dante made the call without taking his eyes off Adrian. "Terminal 9, lock Dock 17. No cargo moves under Moretti authority until Elena Langford clears it." Victor gave a humorless laugh. "She has no authority." "She does now." Across the ballroom, Adrian typed rapidly into his phone. Elena noticed Margaret angle her body to shield him from the guests. It was a small movement, almost courteous, but Elena had spent years studying the gestures people made when numbers stopped obeying them. At 11:34, Dante's security director answered through the phone's speaker. "Dock 17 opened 4 minutes ago. The container is already inside the inspection corridor." "Close the outer gate," Elena said. Victor stepped toward the phone. "You will not interfere with my terminal." Elena ignored him. "Check the authorization sequence. It should show 2 executives, 1 compliance officer, and a photographed mechanical seal." A pause followed. "We have all 4, the director said. Victor Langford, Adrian Langford, Elena Langford, and seal number DL704. Elena felt the trap tightening around her. "My credentials were revoked before the dock opened." Adrian lowered his phone. "After you used them to steal $18 million. 6 months earlier, Elena had warned Victor that 3 executive credentials could bypass Terminal 9's ordinary inspections. He dismissed the risk as theoretical. Adrian designed the safeguards, he had told her. "Stop searching for enemies inside my family." Elena responded by comparing digital cargo records against photographs, handwritten seal logs, fuel receipts, and union shifts. The invisible work had exposed duplicate insurance claims, stopped a fraudulent fuel contract, and corrected Victor's investor presentations. He called successful deals instinct and her warnings paranoia. Now the same system she had protected was identifying her as the person who opened Dock 17. Dante's director spoke again. "The electronic seal record is valid." "Electronic records can be rewritten," Elena said. "Find the physical gate ledger." Adrian smiled faintly, still hiding behind paperwork. Elena turned toward him. "Paper doesn't change because someone receives an administrator password." Elena trusted the small blue notebook in her handbag because ink could not be remotely erased. Its final entry read, DL704 retired, clasp June 18. The mechanical seal supposedly attached to the container had been destroyed 11 weeks earlier. Elena removed the notebook from her handbag. Margaret's expression changed. It lasted less than a second, but Dante saw it. "What does that prove?" Victor demanded. "That the photograph is old," Elena answered. "Someone paired a historical image with a new authorization record." Victor stared at the handwritten entry. Anyone could write that. "The gatehouse keeps damaged seals for 90 days. DL704 should still be in the evidence cabinet." Dante relayed the instruction. At 11:37, his director returned with an answer. "The cabinet is empty." Victor looked at Elena as though the missing seal confirmed his accusation. "You had compliance access to that cabinet." "So did Margaret's investigators," Elena said. The attorney remained composed. "My team inspected Terminal 9 last month. We never removed evidence." Elena remembered the inspection. Margaret had requested temporary access after claiming an insurer needed confirmation of the terminal's loss control procedures. Elena had approved it because the request carried Adrian's signature. That approval was another true action waiting to be turned against her. A uniformed security supervisor approached Victor and spoke quietly. Financial crimes detectives had arrived outside, but the ballroom lockdown prevented them from entering. "Open the doors," Elena told Victor. "Let them examine the records independently." "You asked me to freeze the merger," Victor said. "Now you want police inside before the vote. Everything you've done tonight delays the acquisition. That acquisition is exactly why someone chose tonight." The ballroom clock moved to 11:39. Dante's phone emitted a sharp warning tone. His director's voice returned, strained but controlled. "The inspection corridor just lost power. Backup systems are not responding." "What is inside the container?" Dante asked. Elena opened her blue notebook to an entry she had made 3 weeks earlier. She had copied a cargo code after finding it attached to 2 different insurance declarations. "Officially emergency medical equipment," she said, "but the declared weight is 26 tons too heavy." A distant alarm sounded through the phone. Then the security director delivered the news Elena had feared. "The container is gone." Gone. The word carried Elena back 3 weeks, to the first time Doc 17 had appeared where it did not belong. At 6:12 on a Friday evening, she had been comparing digital cargo declarations against handwritten gate logs, records conspirators rarely bothered to alter. One insurance declaration listed a refrigerated container carrying emergency medical equipment. The cargo code was ordinary. The route was not. The container had entered Terminal 9 twice on the same day. Elena first assumed a clerical duplicate. She searched the archived manifests and found the second entry attached to a decommissioned industrial generator weighing 26 tons more than the medical shipment. She called the scheduling clerk. "System correction," he told her. "CFO's office approved it." "Who requested the correction?" "General Counsel." Margaret and Adrian both had legitimate reasons to correct manifest during merger preparation. Elena opened the authorization history, expecting to find one of their signatures. Instead, she found Matteo Rinaldi's encrypted certificate. Rinaldi had managed Moretti financial operations before dying 6 years earlier. His credentials should have been permanently revoked from every port system. Elena tested whether an old certificate had merely survived a software migration. A harmless validation attempt failed, proving someone had rebuilt Rinaldi's authorization key. At 6:41, Elena requested a private meeting. Victor was inside a merger retreat where communications passed through Adrian's team, but she called his personal number until he answered. "This needs to be important. I found a dead man's active credentials inside Terminal 9. Silence followed. Then Adrian's voice sounded faintly in the background. Victor was not alone. "Send it to Margaret," he said. "I need to speak with you privately. We're finalizing a billion-dollar merger, Elena. I cannot abandon the negotiations every time you find an irregularity. This irregularity can authorize protected cargo. Then follow protocol." He ended the call. Protocol required sending the evidence to the same legal office that had requested the suspicious correction. She refused. Instead, she searched the physical seal records. Container DL704 appeared on the digital inventory as active, but the Gethouse damage report showed its clasp had broken on June 18. Elena wrote the number in her blue notebook and requested that the damaged seal remain inside the evidence cabinet. At 7:03, she discovered a second connection. The false cargo code had been used on shipments passing through every terminal included in Victor's merger. Together, those containers had generated unusually large insurance valuations, secured by a company that would become a major Langford global creditor immediately after the board vote. If the shipments disappeared, the insurer could declare Langford in default and seize voting rights over the merged terminals. Someone was constructing a legal path to take Victor's empire without buying it. Elena needed outside help, but a public investigation could expose 11 relocated dock workers' families who had testified about earlier cargo thefts. She contacted Samuel Price, the court-appointed financial liaison assigned to the protected families. He insisted they meet away from Langford property. 2 nights later, Elena passed Price a sealed envelope containing cargo references and emergency relocation instructions. "Why not tell your husband?" Price asked. "I tried." "Try again. If Victor confronts Adrian or Margaret without knowing which one is involved, they'll erase the records and locate the witnesses." Price studied her. "Someone near him is using the merger as cover. Someone who knows he believes betrayal always comes from outsiders." Price promised to request an independent forensic warrant. It would take 72 hours. Elena returned to her office the following morning and found the blue status light on her monitor blinking twice every 10 seconds. The signal meant her session was being mirrored by an administrator. She disconnected the network cable, but someone had already viewed her searches, Price's call record and the Rinaldi inquiry. A new message appeared through the computer's offline maintenance channel. "Compliance review initiated. Do not alter company funds or contact outside parties." Only 3 people could send commands through that channel: Victor, Adrian, and Margaret. Elena opened the protected trust account. Its balance was still $18.4 million, but a liquidation instruction had been scheduled for 4:30 the following afternoon. Once executed, the money would pass through the insurer connected to the false cargo declarations. She had less than 24 hours to save the fund. Then her office door unlocked from the hallway. Margaret entered without knocking, looked at the Dick's table and smiled. "You've been very busy, Elena." Margaret closed the door. "You access protected trust records without notifying legal." "I oversee compliance." "You oversee it on behalf of the board." Elena kept her hands away from the keyboard. Why was a liquidation order attached to the Employee Protection Fund? Margaret's expression did not change. "Merger preparation requires temporary consolidation into an insurer connected to duplicate cargo declarations." For the first time, Margaret's smile disappeared. "You should be careful," she said. "Victor already believes this merger has become too personal for you." Margaret only needed to make Victor distrust the person raising the question. After Margaret left, Elena contacted Samuel Price through the emergency number assigned to the protected families. He did not answer. At 3:52 the following afternoon, the trust's liquidation order moved from pending to active. Elena had 25 minutes before $18.4 million entered an account controlled by the merger's insurer. Adrian had signed the suspicious correction, Margaret controlled legal review, and Victor remained unreachable. Elena used emergency authority Victor had granted her after a ransomware attack, allowing endangered employee funds to enter court-approved escrow without board consent. At 4:17, she transferred the entire balance to Aurelia Fiduciary, the independent institution assigned to protect the dock workers' families. The money was safe. Seconds later, the system displayed Victor's credentials beside hers. Elena had not entered them. Then the audit history began deleting itself. She disconnected the terminal, photographed the remaining screen with an offline camera, and wrote the transaction reference in her blue notebook. Before leaving, she placed the original damage report for seal DL74 inside an envelope addressed to Victor. The envelope never reached him. By the following evening, Margaret had recast the transfer as theft, Aurelia as an offshore shell, Elena's authority as stolen access, and her meeting with Price as a secret Moretti alliance. Everything shown publicly was built around something she had genuinely done. That was why the lie worked. At 11:41 p.m., the story returned to the ballroom. The missing container had vanished during an 8-minute power failure. Victor's merger vote remained scheduled for midnight, and Elena's credentials appeared on every critical record. Dante ended the call with Terminal 9. Where would they take it? He asked. There are only 2 exits large enough, Elena said, the river gate and the bonded rail tunnel. My people control the river. Then it's going through the tunnel. Adrian stepped forward, or Elena arranged for you to protect the wrong exit. Margaret connected her tablet to the ballroom screen. A new document appeared, Aurelia Fiduciary's ownership structure. The institution's parent company had purchased its insurance from Moretti Maritime. Victor pointed toward Dante. There is your independent escrow. Elena studied the document. The insurance relationship was real but irrelevant. Thousands of companies used Moretti coverage. Margaret displayed another file, an audio transcript from Elena's hotel meeting. One sentence had been isolated. Once the money moves, Victor won't be able to recover it. Her actual words were, once the money moves into the insurer's account, Victor won't be able to recover it. The middle had been removed. Dante's gaze hardened. Do you have the original recording? No, Margaret answered. Mrs. Langford's contact erased it. Elena faced Dante. Samuel Price is a court-appointed liaison. Find him. We tried, Dante said. He disappeared this morning. That shook her more than the accusation. Victor moved closer. You wanted the money protected by a Moretti-insured institution. You met a man tied to their operations. And now a container disappears while Dante closes the river gate on your instructions. I told him to close both exits. You said the outer gate, Adrian corrected, not the tunnel. Dante still saw holes in the case, but calculation had replaced certainty. Give me your notebook, he said. No. I can authenticate the entries. And every person named inside it becomes visible to whoever compromised your dead accountant's certificate. Dante extended his hand. You asked for my empire behind you. That requires trust. I never asked for your empire. You offered it. The words struck deeper than Elena intended. But she would not surrender the only record no administrator could alter. Dante signaled his security chief. Take her to the private interview suite. No phones, no network access, and no one enters without my approval. It was protection disguised as confinement. Victor nodded toward the waiting detectives. She is under criminal investigation. She remains in this building until I know which records are real, Dante said. He had stopped Victor's humiliation only to repeat the same mistake more quietly, choosing control over her judgment. 2 Moretti guards escorted her from the ballroom at 11:46. Inside the suite, Elena noticed an evacuation map showing an old catering passage to the underground records room. Then a man wearing a detective's badge entered. Tell me where the 11 families were relocated, he said, and this ends tonight. No legitimate investigator would have known the exact number. Elena slammed the service door's fire alarm bar. Warning bells filled the corridor, releasing every magnetic lock in the suite. She entered the catering passage before the man could reach her. At 11:52, Dante arrived to question her. The suite was empty. On the table lay Elena's wedding ring. Her blue notebook was gone. Dante stared at Elena's wedding ring on the table while alarms echoed through the hotel. His security chief, Luca Ferraro, entered behind him. The man with the badge disappeared during the evacuation, Luca said. The city confirms he wasn't assigned to this building. Dante had confined Elena to control the evidence and placed her inside a room already penetrated by the enemy. Find her, he said, before they do. In the ballroom, the clock reached 11:55. Victor insisted the merger vote continue. Cancellation before midnight would activate a financing clause allowing the insurer to claim temporary control over the 6 terminals. That clause had been introduced by Adrian and approved by Margaret. Without Elena's review. Her absence damaged both empires. The container was missing, the fund frozen, unions refusing night work, and Moretti insurers preparing to suspend coverage. Dante returned to the stage. "Delay the vote," he said. Adrian shook his head. "We miss midnight, the creditor clause activates." "Who selected that deadline?" "The board." "Who wrote the clause?" Margaret answered. "I did, under Adrian's direction." Victor looked between them. It was necessary to secure financing. Dante finally saw that Elena had been the barrier preventing powerful men from signing documents they did not understand. Luca handed Dante a photograph recovered from the private suite surveillance system. It showed the false detective entering at 11:48. His badge was angled away from the camera, but his hand rested over his jacket pocket. Elena had moved backward the moment she saw him. "She recognized the danger before my guards did," Dante said. Victor's expression remained cold, or she recognized an accomplice. Dante looked at the wedding ring again. That was the first contradiction. A thief could have fled before the gala. Elena instead left valuable jewelry and carried only a notebook of audit references. She had fled with evidence, not wealth. Dante ordered Luca to reconstruct the fund transfer from the original server timestamps rather than the ballroom presentation. At 12:03, the merger deadline passed. The insurer immediately filed notice of its temporary claim over the terminals. Adrian reacted before Margaret finished reading the notice. "We can reverse it at the emergency ratification tomorrow night." Dante studied him. "You knew there would be another vote?" "It's standard procedure." "It isn't," Victor said slowly. The second vote would occur during the Harbor Alliance dinner, where terminal owners, union leaders, insurers, and federal trade officials were already scheduled to attend. Canceling it would leave the creditor claim uncontested. The public event had changed venues, but the trap remained active. At 12:21, Luca returned with the raw authentication sequence from Elena's transfer. "Elena used valid emergency authority," he reported. "Victor's credential was added 2 seconds earlier." Victor nodded. "That proves she used mine." "No," Dante said. "Your credential requires a live biometric confirmation." At 4:17, cameras showed Victor 70 miles away in a secure room without his devices. Someone had cloned his authorization. The technical contradiction broke the prosecution's strongest claim. Dante examined the certificate chain attached to Matteo Rinaldi's forged signature. The certificate had been created using an obsolete encryption standard discontinued 5 years earlier. Meticulous Matteo would never have used obsolete encryption. Someone had reconstructed his access from archived documents without understanding his habits. Dante turned toward Adrian, who maintained Langford's archived security files. "Compliance," Adrian answered. "Before Elena became director." Adrian hesitated. "Legal supervised them." Margaret closed her tablet. Dante now had 2 contradictions, but not enough to identify the person directing the operation. He designed a test. He privately gave Margaret, Victor, and Adrian 3 different false locations: the River Gate, Eastern Freight Yard, and North Rail Depot. 20 minutes later, Luca received an alert. 2 vehicles connected to Langford's contracted security company had left Terminal 9 and changed course toward North Rail. Only Adrian had received that location. The third contradiction was no longer about Elena. It was about the man standing beside Victor. Dante avoided confrontation and ordered discreet surveillance. In the underground records room, an archivist recalled Elena requesting an old paper map of the bonded rail system. "She asked about an old way station," the archivist said, "the one beneath St. Alden Warehouse." "Did she say why?" "She said modern records lie, but old foundations don't." The warehouse stood near North Rail, connected to the original freight tunnel. Elena had gone toward the container, not away from it. At 1:06 a.m., Luca's surveillance team reported that Adrian's vehicles had arrived outside St. Aldan warehouse. Dante picked up Elena's wedding ring and closed his hand around it. "Bring no Langford personnel," he ordered, "and if we find her, no one gives her another command." Then the lights inside the abandoned warehouse came on. St. Aldan's lights revealed the missing container above an old rail scale. Dante's vehicles stopped 2 blocks away. "Adrian's men are covering the street entrance," Luca reported. 4 inside, at least 2 outside. "Do not enter until we know where Elena is." Dante saw a shadow cross a glowing second-floor window. Elena was inside. She had reached St. Aldan through the abandoned tunnel, still carrying her blue notebook. She had found the missing container at 12:38. The exterior identification plates had been removed. Its electronic seal showed DL704, but the metal clasp was new. Someone had recreated the number of a destroyed seal to match the false digital record. Elena used an old maintenance camera that mechanically time-stamped printed photographs beyond Langford's digital reach. Then she found Samuel Price locked inside the former railmaster's office. He was shaken but able to walk. His phone and court credentials were missing. "They took me yesterday morning," he said. "They wanted the names of the families." "Did you give them anything?" "No, but they have your envelope." That explained the doctored hotel recording and the precise number of protected families. Adrian's contractors arrived before Elena could move Samuel, so she concealed him in a maintenance room and returned to the container for evidence. At 1:11 a.m., Dante entered through the western service door with Luca and 2 security officers. He found Elena beside the rail scale, examining a faded measurement chart. She turned at the sound of his footsteps. "If you came to confine me again, you're wasting time." "I came because I was wrong." "That was fast." "Your ring, the cloned authorization, and Adrian's reaction to false information cleared you." Elena's expression remained guarded. "You still treated me like evidence instead of a person." "Yes." No defense, no excuse. Dante placed her wedding ring on the scale table, but did not push it toward her. "I won't give you another order," he said. "Tell me what you need." Elena looked at Luca, then at the officers behind him. "Samuel Price is in the north maintenance room. Get him out through the western passage, quietly." Dante nodded to Luca. "And the container?" he asked. "It's too heavy because it isn't carrying medical equipment." "Can you open it?" "Yes, but if the electronic seal breaks, the system will alert whoever controls it." Dante waited. Elena understood the difference. He was asking, not commanding. "There's another way," she said. "This building used mechanical inspection panels before electronic scanners existed. The scale operator could access a container's lower compartment without breaking the primary seal." She followed the old measurement chart to a recessed platform beneath the container. Dante helped clear a rusted panel while Elena located the manual inspection hatch. Unlike Victor, Dante stayed while the answer was still uncertain. Inside the lower compartment were 12 decommissioned security servers, each stamped with Moretti maritime inventory numbers. Dante recognized them immediately. These were destroyed after Matteo died. "No," Elena said. "They were recorded as destroyed." The servers contained everything needed to rebuild Rinaldi's signature and imitate executive credentials, the machinery used to frame Elena. Luca returned with Samuel. "He confirms Elena's transfer instructions were lawful," Luca said. "He also has the escrow receipt." Samuel had preserved a duplicate receipt proving Aurelia was court-approved and the money untouched. It cleared Elena of theft, but did not identify who framed her. A metal door slammed below. Adrian's contractors had discovered the western entrance. "We have less than 2 minutes," Luca warned. Dante reached for his phone, but Elena stopped him. They monitor Moretti's security channels. That's how they moved the container after your first call. Dante switched the phone off immediately. Elena opened her blue notebook. During her escape from the hotel, she had copied the warehouse's original fire control diagram. The lower platforms were divided by heavy containment doors designed to isolate fuel fires. If Luca's team draws them toward the central corridor, I can close the partitions from the railmaster's panel, she said. The panel is beside the north stairs, Dante replied. You would be exposed. So would anyone you send. I'll go with you. No, you take Samuel and the printed photographs. If this fails, the evidence still leaves the building. Dante wanted to refuse, but her plan was sound. He followed her instructions. Luca drew the contractors toward the central corridor, while Elena lowered steel partitions between them and the container. Elena returned through the upper walkway. Dante was waiting beside the tunnel entrance with Samuel and the evidence. You could have left, she said. I said my empire stood behind you. I'm learning that doesn't mean standing in front of every decision. For the first time, Elena looked at him without anger. They entered the freight tunnel together. Before leaving, Luca removed one server drive from the lower compartment. Its maintenance label identified the company that had last accessed it, Shaw Legal Risk Services. Margaret's firm. But beneath the label was a handwritten collection code. Samuel recognized it from the envelope stolen during his abduction. That code wasn't created by Margaret, he said. It belongs to the executive who ordered my surveillance. Elena opened her blue notebook and compared the handwriting with the merger approval she had copied 3 weeks earlier. The letters matched. Adrian Langford had signed both. By 1:24 a.m., Elena, Dante, Samuel, and Luca had reached a Moretti legal office beneath the Harbor Exchange building. Dante gave Elena the conference room and waited for her to decide who entered. She allowed Samuel, Luca, 2 independent forensic accountants, and a federal trade attorney whose office already supervised the protected family escrow. Victor was not invited. Elena arranged the recovered evidence across the table. The mechanical seal photograph, raw authentication tape, and escrow receipt proved Elena had not stolen the money, but did not identify who framed her. The Shaw legal label, Adrian's collection code, and the response to the false North Rail location connected them to the scheme, but remained insufficient for conviction. Adrian can claim Margaret handled the servers without his knowledge, Elena said. Margaret can claim the collection code was copied, and the vehicles were dispatched under a general security contract. Dante stood at the opposite side of the table. Then we need the ownership record connecting Adrian to the insurer. The insurer is buried beneath 6 holding companies, one accountant said. Tracing beneficial ownership could take weeks. We have until tonight, Elena replied. At 9, the Harbor Alliance dinner would host an emergency ratification vote. Canceling it or failing to suspend the creditor clause would give Adrian control of all 6 terminals. Elena studied copies of the insurance filings. Each claim referenced a master bond agreement, but the electronic document contained only a scanned signature page. Where's the original bond? She asked. Samuel answered. The insurer must present it to the Federal Trade Observer before the emergency vote. Dante understood. Adrian cannot remain hidden if the claim requires a physical document. He'll use a representative, Elena said. Probably Margaret, but the original bond should contain a registration impression identifying the issuing office. If we authenticate that impression, we can trace where the agreement was created. And if he replaces it, Luca asked, then we make him replace it with something only the conspirator would know to use. Elena built the counter trap. The recovered server drive was labeled Unit 12. She instructed one accountant to create a preliminary report. claiming Unit 12 contained a restoration file capable of identifying every administrator who had cloned the old Moretti certificates. The report included a false technical reference, Rinaldi Recovery Index 7N. No such index existed. Only the people in the conference room knew the phrase. Dante contacted Victor through a recorded legal channel. "We recovered evidence clearing Elena," he told him. "Unit 12 contains the original administrator index. Bring Adrian and Margaret to the Harbor Alliance dinner. Do not confront them." Victor's voice tightened. "You expect me to sit beside the man trying to take my company? Elena sat beside you for years while you ignored her warnings." Silence followed. Elena looked away from the speaker. Victor finally agreed. To deliver the controlled information, Victor forwarded the preliminary report to Margaret under the pretense of requesting an emergency legal response. Margaret would almost certainly show it to Adrian. Elena sent the drive to 2 forensic teams and distributed certified copies of Samuel's receipt, the seal photograph, and the gatehouse report. "If every computer in the building fails," Elena said, "the paper records still survive." Dante nodded. "And if they block Samuel from entering?" "He records sworn testimony before the dinner. 3 certified copies, 3 separate custodians." "What about you?" Elena closed her blue notebook. "I enter through the front." Dante's expression changed. "Adrian publicly accused you. The criminal complaint is still active. That is why I have to appear. He believes humiliation made me hide. I need him to keep believing he understands me." Dante did not argue, but the strain in his face remained. "You don't have to prove courage to anyone," he said. "I'm not proving courage. I'm correcting the record." Victor had mistaken silence for weakness and loyalty for dependence. Dante was learning otherwise. At 4:40 a.m., the first forensic report arrived. Unit 12's internal log confirmed that its encryption library had generated Matteo Rinaldi's forged certificate. The command originated through a Shaw legal access terminal. Margaret was connected to the means. The identity of the person directing her remained concealed behind an executive code. At 5:03, Luca received notice that Shaw Legal had filed an emergency motion seeking destruction of Unit 12 as stolen proprietary equipment. The filing specifically claimed the server contained a compromised Rinaldi Recovery Index 7N. The false phrase had worked. Margaret had used information available only inside Victor's controlled report. The motion connected Margaret to the conspiracy, but not Adrian to her and the insurer. She examined the filing's digital receipt. It had been paid through a Langford executive legal account ending in 4419. Elena had reconciled the executive legal accounts for years. Account 449 belonged to Adrian. Dante looked at her. "Is that enough?" "It proves he paid to destroy evidence he should not have known existed," she said. "But he'll claim Margaret used the account without permission. So tonight we make him act personally." At 8:30 a.m., Victor sent Adrian one final controlled message. "Elena recovered the bond's original registration number. She will reveal it before the vote." 7 minutes later, the insurer notified the Harbor Alliance that it would present a replacement bond at dinner because the original had been accidentally damaged. Elena read the notice once. Then she handed it to Dante. "Now we know what he's afraid of." By 7, terminal owners, union representatives, officials, insurers, reporters, and Langford's board filled the Harbor Exchange ballroom. The emergency ratification would begin at 9. Elena entered through the front doors wearing a simple navy dress provided by the federal attorney's office. The wine-stained gown was gone. Her blue notebook remained in her hand. Conversation stopped as she crossed the room. Victor stood near the stage with a calm Adrian and Margaret, who carried the replacement bond. Dante waited beside the Moretti delegation. He did not approach Elena. That distance was part of their plan. Samuel and the accountants would testify before Elena challenged the claim with the seal photograph, authentication records, and original registration number. But Adrian adapted before the first witness spoke. At 7:42, two federal marshals entered with an emergency order accusing Samuel of mishandling protected information. The complaint cited the envelope taken during his abduction and falsely claimed he had exposed the family's identities. Samuel was removed for questioning. At 7:55, Margaret challenged Unit 12's chain of custody. She argued that Elena and Dante had entered St. Aldan warehouse without a warrant and removed equipment belonging to Langford Global. The Federal Trade Observer ruled that the forensic report could be reviewed but not treated as final proof during the vote. Adrian had neutralized their strongest witness and weakened the technical evidence. At 8:10, Margaret presented the replacement bond. The replacement appeared flawless, bearing the insurer's seal, verified notarization, and matching signatures. Elena studied the registration impression. It had been produced that morning. The replacement was created after Victor sent you the controlled report, she said. Margaret faced the room. Of course it was. The original was damaged, so we followed lawful replacement procedure. Where is the damaged original? In Mafia, because its registration office would reveal who created the insurer. Adrian rose from his seat. This has become embarrassing. Elena moved company money without board approval, met secretly with a Moretti intermediary, fled a lawful investigation, and stole proprietary equipment. Now she wants this board to trust handwritten notes over certified documents. Several board members nodded. Victor remained silent. Victor now knew his credentials were cloned and the fund intact, yet his silence still gave Adrian control of the story. At 8:26, the insurer's attorney announced that unless the merger was ratified, temporary control of all 6 terminals would become permanent at 9. The board moved to accelerate the vote. Elena approached Dante during the recess. He removed Samuel sooner than expected, she said. He also replaced the bond through a different notary. He knows we recovered more than he planned. Do we stop? No, he still hasn't acted personally. Dante lowered his voice. Then we proceed. At 8:40, the session resumed. Dante requested the floor. The Moretti organization promised Elena Langford access to every resource under my authority, he said. That promise was made before all evidence had been reviewed. Victor watched him carefully. Adrian leaned back with quiet satisfaction. Dante continued. Unit 12 cannot be authenticated here. Samuel Price is unavailable. The original bond has not been produced. Under these conditions, Moretti Maritime cannot support Elena's accusation. A murmur spread through the room. Elena stood alone beneath the stage lights. Margaret smiled. Dante's next words appeared even colder. Moretti security will escort Mrs. Langford from the voting chamber. Luca approached Elena. She held Dante's gaze for 1 second, then allowed Luca to lead her toward the side exit. Victor finally moved. You said your empire stood behind her. Dante looked at him. And you said she was your wife. Victor had no answer. The doors closed behind Elena. Adrian immediately requested a private executive certification. With Elena removed and Dante apparently withdrawing support, he argued that the insurer needed temporary access to Langford's protected employee records to prevent further unauthorized transfers. The request was broader than the merger required. It included the relocation database for the 11 dockworkers' families. Victor objected. Those records have nothing to do with terminal ownership. They are tied to the frozen escrow, Adrian replied. If we do not verify the beneficiaries, the insurer can challenge every protection payment. Margaret produced an emergency authorization form. The Federal Observer refused to approve it, without a Langford executive assuming personal liability. Adrian had reached Elena's predicted constraint. Accessing sealed family records required his live executive signature. He stepped forward. "I'll assume responsibility." Adrian signed. Behind the closed side doors, Elena entered a secured monitoring room. Luca handed her an offline tablet displaying a decoy relocation database. The names were fictitious. Each false family record contained a different embedded reference identifying the credentials used to open it. At 8:47, Adrian's newly authorized account accessed the file. Margaret's tablet copied it 12 seconds later. Then the information was forwarded to the same private security contractor that had sent vehicles to St. Alden warehouse. The entire chain was recorded by the federal attorney. They had proven Adrian personally directed the search for protected witnesses. But Adrian had prepared one more move. At 8:52, every screen in the ballroom changed. An edited video made Elena appear to plant the Moretti servers inside the container. Adrian turned toward the board. She manufactured the evidence. The board voted. 5 members supported ratification. Victor abstained. Dante cast the 6th and deciding vote in favor. The merger was approved. Adrian smiled as the insurer's control transfer began. In the monitoring room, Elena watched a 60-second confirmation clock appear on the screen. 59. 58. Luca looked at her. Dante voted with them. He had to, Elena said. At 30 seconds, Adrian used his personal executive key to finalize the transfer. At 20 seconds, the system captured his live biometric signature. At 10 seconds, Elena opened her blue notebook to the registration number she had withheld from every digital report. At 5 seconds, the ballroom doors unlocked. Elena stepped back into the light. "Stop the transfer." Elena's voice carried across the ballroom with 3 seconds remaining. Adrian turned toward her. "You were removed from this proceeding." The federal observer wasn't. Elena handed her blue notebook to the trade attorney, who opened it to the registration number she had copied during her original audit. The observer compared it with a certified state record prepared that afternoon. At 1 second, she placed an administrative hold on the transfer. The confirmation clock froze. Adrian's smile disappeared. Elena walked to the center of the stage. "The replacement bond presented tonight was registered this morning," she said. "But the creditor claim depends on an original bond issued 11 months ago. This is its actual registration number." The ballroom screen displayed the certified ownership declaration attached to the original agreement. Behind 6 shell companies, AL Harbor Holdings controlled the insurer with Adrian as sole representative. Victor rose slowly. "You own the company preparing to seize our terminals." Adrian remained composed. "A contingent interest is not illegal. I created a private safeguard in case the merger failed." "You created the condition that made it fail," Elena said. "That is an accusation, not proof." Secret ownership established motive, but not Adrian's decisive acts. Margaret stood beside him. "Every action taken by my firm was part of a lawful internal investigation. Mr. Langford did not direct our technical procedures." Elena nodded toward the federal attorney. The decoy relocation database appeared on screen. At 8:47, Adrian accessed the false family records. Margaret copied them 12 seconds later and forwarded them to the North Rail contractor. Adrian did not flinch. "The transfer was automatic," he said. "Our security systems distribute protected data to approved contractors." "That system does not exist," Victor said. Adrian looked at his brother. "You admitted last night that you don't understand your own compliance architecture." The insult landed because it was true. Elena stepped between them. That access chain proves you were searching for the witnesses. But you're right, it does not prove you created the forged evidence. She turned toward Dante. He placed the Unit 12 forensic report on the document table. Adrian laughed. Evidence stolen from a container, Elena opened herself. That was your strongest argument, Elena said, so we let you complete the transfer. Harbor Alliance had recorded the unique serial number of Adrian's personal executive key during live authorization. The forensic accountant enlarged the serial on screen. The same number appeared inside Unit 12's permanent maintenance log. That key had activated the command rebuilding Matteo Rinaldi's certificate. It had also initiated the process that cloned Victor's biometric authorization. Unit 12's mechanically secured clock and permanent log had been verified by 2 independent laboratories. Adrian had just authenticated the decisive evidence against himself. For the first time, his control broke. He turned toward Margaret. You told me the permanent log was damaged. The room went silent. Margaret stared at him. His accusation revealed knowledge neither had publicly admitted. Elena did not celebrate. She opened the blue notebook again. The cloned credentials moved the protected fund, authorized the missing container, and created the bank records used to accuse me. The fund was never stolen. Samuel Price's certified receipt confirms every dollar remains in court-approved escrow. The federal attorney displayed Samuel's recorded testimony. He identified Margaret's contractor as the group that detained him and took Elena's envelope. Margaret reached for her tablet. Every screen in the ballroom went dark. Emergency lights illuminated the exits. Adrian had activated his contingency. The creditor agreement granted the insurer temporary control during a systems failure. Adrian's contractors moved toward the evidence room with the destruction order. But Elena had anticipated the blackout. Separate custodians held 3 certified evidence sets. Samuel's testimony and the server drive were offline and elsewhere. Luca's team and federal marshals blocked the evidence room entrance. The contractors stopped without confrontation. Dante switched on a battery-powered projector prepared before the event. The final image appeared on the wall. The mechanical photograph of seal DL704, time-stamped inside St. Alden warehouse. Beside it was the original gatehouse report, proving the real seal had been destroyed 11 weeks earlier. Digital records had accused Elena. Physical evidence proved those records were manufactured. The emergency lights returned. Victor walked onto the stage and removed Adrian's executive access badge. You used my arrogance against the company, he said. Federal officials blocked the exits, suspended Margaret's authority, and detained the responsible contractor for questioning. The Federal Observer canceled the creditor transfer and froze the insurer's claim. Then Dante faced the same cameras that had recorded Elena's humiliation the night before. Elena Langford did not steal $18.4 million, he said. She protected 11 families, preserved both our companies, and exposed a conspiracy none of us were disciplined enough to see. Victor lowered his eyes. Elena stood beneath the stage lights with her blue notebook in one hand and no wedding ring on the other. This time, nobody laughed. By sunrise, federal investigators had frozen Adrian's shell companies and seized the insurer's ownership records. Margaret's authority to practice corporate law was suspended pending charges involving fraud, evidence manipulation, and interference with protected witnesses. The contractors who detained Samuel lost access to every Langford and Moretti property. The 11 families were relocated under federal supervision. Their $18.4 million fund remained untouched. The consequences remained: delayed cargo, union demands for oversight, and investor scrutiny of Adrian's agreements. Victor resigned as chief executive. 1 week later, he returned to the Marlowe Foundation ballroom. standing on the same stage where he had thrown champagne at Elena and accused her of theft. This time, the cameras had been invited by Elena. Victor faced the board, the employees, and the public. My accusations against Elena Langford were false, he said. She acted lawfully to protect company employees and their families. I ignored her warnings, diminished her work, and used my position as her husband and employer to humiliate her publicly. He paused, but Elena offered no rescue. I was wrong, he continued. There is no justification for what I did. I will cooperate with the investigation, surrender my voting authority during restructuring, and accept the terms of our divorce without contest. He stepped away from the microphone. Elena accepted the correction, not the marriage. Dante spoke next. I also owe Elena an apology. I offered protection, then treated that offer as permission to control her. When doubt entered the room, I trusted confinement more than her judgment. That decision placed her in danger. He looked directly at her. I was wrong. No explanation changes that. Dante submitted Moretti's security to independent review and ordered the obsolete credential archives dismantled under federal supervision. Then he offered Elena leadership of a new joint compliance division, overseeing both shipping networks. She declined. The room reacted with surprise. Dante did not. I won't move from being invisible inside one man's company to being powerful only because another man grants it, she said. What would you accept? He asked. An independent firm. My employees, my authority, and contracts that either company can lose if it violates our standards. Dante nodded. Write the terms. Elena did. 6 weeks later, Harbor Integrity Group opened above the restored St. Alden warehouse. Its first employees included forensic accountants, union auditors, witness protection specialists, and former gate clerks whose handwritten records had survived when digital systems failed. Langford Global and Moretti Maritime became its first clients. Not owners. Clients. Elena kept the blue notebook in a glass case inside the conference room, open to the entry for Seal DL 704. Beside it rested the mechanical photograph that had helped expose the conspiracy. On the evening of the firm's first board meeting, Dante arrived without guards inside the room and without documents requiring her approval. I have a question that isn't business, he said. Elena closed her laptop. That would be new for both of us. Dinner. No negotiations, no protection agreement, and no expectations. She considered him carefully. Respect had come before trust. Trust would require time. One dinner, she said, after I finish reviewing your company's security failures. Dante accepted the condition with a quiet smile and took a seat outside her office. Months earlier, Elena had stood alone beneath ballroom lights while powerful men decided what her silence meant. Now, through the glass wall of the company she owned, Dante waited while she completed her work. His empire remained behind her. Her future belonged entirely to her.